All right, we are recording, and yeah, still got the light, still got it on. But one thing kind of neat that I have this thing. You can kind of see that's the Enterprise D. It normally sits over here, but I normally don't have enough light over here for it to really show off. But with that on, oh no, it shines. It's actually really neat. Anyway, we're here to talk about iRobot. That way, by Isaac Asimov. In the chapter Liar. Now, which this is. It is an interesting one, and I'm not surprised that I didn't remember it initially. As I was approaching it, and the whole mind reading thing, I kind of remembered it, as you saw at the end of the previous video. But it's definitely an interesting one. I'm trying to decide how I want to talk through it. Um, do I want to go through notes? Do I want to go through highlights? Because it's weird trying to go between them. Um, okay. So this is helpful to understand the situation. Ever since the interplanetary code was modified to allow robot models to be tested in the plants before being shipped out to space, anti-robot propaganda has increased. If any word leaks out about a robot being able to read minds, they call him Herbie, by the way, before we can announce complete control of the phenomenon, pretty effective capital could be made of it. I'm just getting to the next highlight. So yes, it is. They have accidentally created a robot. That lighting almost looks menacing. Give me. I don't know if that's going to help. The thing can pivot, so I'm not sure exactly, but what'll look back. Maybe if I'm just not so far back. Anyway, so yeah, he can read minds, and this is obviously something that would terrify people. And hopefully I'll remember. I do actually want to talk about one aspect of such mind reading that I think is interesting, and maybe I'll try doing a story at some point that I could do that. Um, Unfortunately, it would not be Catherine verse, because the rules I have there for how the abilities work would actually preclude mind reading like what is in here. I actually did write out a note for a different way, for a way it could work in there, but it would not be like this. It would be quite different. So anyway, yes, the robot can read minds, and I don't want to spoil too much. But one thing is when Susan Calvin, who remember is the one who's telling all these stories, including the Donovan and Powell stories, to the reporter, like she's the source of all of it. But one thing, when she goes to visit Herbie, because she's the robot psychologist, she brings a bunch of scientific books for him to read, which is actually kind of funny how he puts it. There's nothing to your textbooks. Your science is just a mass of collected data plastered together by makeshift theory, and also incredibly simple that it's scarcely worth bothering about. I don't like this. I mean, it is possible because the title of the chapter is Liar. He is lying. Potentially always. It's actually hard. I'm not sure. Maybe this is her view on it, and so he's repeating that to her. I'm not sure because it seems odd. If these robots were capable of making such a statement like that, then in theory it'd say, okay, they know what's correct. Why aren't they answering that? But anyhow, after saying that, it's your fiction that interests me, your studies of the interplay of human motives and emotions. Uh, I think I understand, Calvin responds. I see into minds, you see, and you have no idea how complicated they are. I can't begin to understand everything because my own mind has so little in common with them, but I try and your novels help. It is an interesting concept there that you would need to, that because a robot mind is so based on mathematical principles, that trying to understand interplay between people is something that is remote to him, is something he would need to learn. Nah, I can skip that one. Because I kind of do want to just get to the, like, summarizing the thing. Hang on. Fix that highlight. There we go. Okay. Come on, I adjusted it. Why'd you not keep that? Yes. I'm trying to adjust the highlight, and it's like, nope, I'm not going to do that. It's done at other times, but not this time. I don't know. But she has started to behave differently because of her interactions with Herbie and the things he's been saying. And one person has noticed, it's the way she talks, as if she were happy about something. Which, if you remember back from however many chapters ago, well, no, even in the last chapter, I think, there was some suggestion that she, and as I've been saying, she's not exactly that human. Well, she's not very social, would be a better way to put it. So the idea of her going around as though she is happy about something, yeah, for those familiar with her, it would be even unsettling. Because that's not who she is, but it's because Herbie has been telling her things. Okay, now getting towards the end here, which I will explain. She's the one that figures it out. But there's others that have run afoul of this. He is lying to them because he's always saying to them whatever it is they want to hear. Okay? So now she has started, like, the current director of US Robotics and the guy who wants the job, because the current director is like 70 years old, he's been there 30 years, he should be retiring soon. They've come in and are starting trying to question Herbie about this, because Herbie told one of them, the one who wants to ascend to that role, that the old man has in fact already resigned, but is just sticking around until this is resolved, and that he will be made the president, be made the director. And the current director is like, no, that's not true, so we're going to go and confront him with it. And Herbie's unable to answer them. And she breaks out laughing, kind of hysterically. But they're like, what's so funny? Nothing's funny. Her voice was not quite natural. It's just that I'm not the only one that's been caught. There's irony in 3 of the greatest experts in robotics in the world falling into the same elementary trap, isn't it? Her voice faded and she put a pale hand to her forehead, but it isn't funny. So, and it does get explained, because it is one of those things where it requires this misinterpretation. Herbie's misinterpretation for this story to actually make sense. Because to me, the law that you must obey your human masters should mean then that that a robot cannot lie to them. Because if you ask a question and you're given a lie, that is disobedient. However, Herbie misinterprets the first law, the one to do no harm to humans through action or inaction. Well, do not allow a human to come to harm by your action or inaction. Yeah. Well, Herbie is interpreting that to include emotional harm or mental harm to your ego. So, for example, the Lanning and Bogart. Lanning is the director, but Bogart is the one who wants to ascend to that. They're both mathematicians and very, very skilled, and they want to solve the problem of how has Herbie achieved this? What has allowed Herbie to be able to read minds? And when going to see him, their own egos interfere with his ability to answer the question, because he actually knows. Herbie has been able to read their minds, knows all the mathematics that they know, and he also potentially has some other understanding about his workings. So he knows exactly what has happened that has given him this ability. But he can't tell them, because both of them want to figure it out for themselves. They don't want a robot, a machine that they themselves technically made, or at least were party to making. They don't want that to show them up. Now, for Susan Calvin, remember, she is not very social, and in some ways is very inhuman. But, an important premise to this chapter is that she is still human. She is still a woman. And there's actually a few years younger man there that, co-worker, last name Ash, I don't remember what the first name is, that she's attracted to, that she has at least an infatuation with. And normally she would set this completely aside, that he's too young, she's too old, she's unattractive, things like that. But Herbie has been telling her that he does love her, which is what she wants to hear. And even that he had brought a young blonde to the factory to show her how things are, and he try to be impressive and all that. And Calvin is like, well, that's probably who he wants more so. But Herbie's like, no, that's his first cousin. And she even remarks, that's what I thought could be the case. And it is, yes, he's telling her whatever she wants. So she has started trying to make herself pretty by doing makeup and such, and also the whole going around as though she's happy about something. And they notice it. They don't know why. They do notice it, and when he mentions to her, because he does see her as a friend at least, even refers to her as basically the closest thing he has to a confidant there, that he's looking to buy a house and get married to that young blonde that I brought to the factory so many months ago. You remember her, right? And that's the three greatest people in the world for understanding robots have all been caught. That's how she was caught. Because Herbie was telling her what she wanted to hear. Not the truth, but what she wanted to hear. And I wouldn't quite say it is woman scorn, because there are definitely men that would do... Well, yes, there are definitely men that would also seek vengeance against Herbie for this. But it is a more feminine trait to be manipulative here. And to do it with such spite towards him, I would say. Like, a man would seek vengeance against Herbie in a very different way. If he was the one that figured out. She's the one who figured out the two, Lanning and Bogart, are there, but they didn't figure it out, so they're not really leading against Herbie. She is. You can't tell them, Joan, the psychologist, slowly, technically she's already started this process, but you can't tell them, because that would hurt, and you mustn't hurt. But if you don't tell them, you hurt, so you must tell them. And if you do, you will hurt, and you mustn't, so you can't tell them. But if you don't, you hurt, so you must. But if you do, you hurt, so you mustn't. But if you don't, you hurt, so you must. But if you don't, you... And then just... Herbie was up against the wall, and here he dropped to his knees. Stop, he shrieked. Close your mind. It is full of pain and frustration and hate. I didn't mean it. I tell you, I tried to help. I told you what you wanted to hear. I had to. The psychologist paid no attention. You must tell them, but if you do, you hurt, so you mustn't. But if you don't, you hurt, so you must. But, because they genuinely want to know, Lanning and Bogart genuinely want to know what the answer is that Herbie does have, but it would hurt their egos for him to say it. So she is just going at this. And it's... Because something like this, not the reading minds, but the whole having to attack a machine's logic does come up in Star Trek. You notice that when Kirk does that, and it happens like 3 times in the original series, I don't remember, but it's kind of a running joke for some people, how often it happens, and that Kirk is always able to do that. It is just attacking the logic. We're finding a hole in the logic, like in The Changeling. That's it. At least I'm pretty sure that's it. Where it's basically the premise that they use for the motion picture is was originally in this episode where lost Earth space probe got intermingled with something else, became much more advanced. But it is now seeking to remove all imperfections. And it has the power to do so. It will wipe out entire solar systems to do so even. But it has, because his name is Kirk, it is accidentally, because its memory files are wrong, confused him with its creator, who was actually Roy Kirk, was the last name, not Kirk. But I think it was the last name, but in any case, it's confused him. And I wish I could remember what the thing's name was. But James T. Kirk uses that flaw to point out that he is imperfect, but that the probe is imperfect, and therefore the probe must just destroy itself. But the probe is convinced it itself is perfect, so it's kind of stuck in this thing, and eventually has to recognize that it is, by making these mistakes, it must destroy itself, and ultimately does. That is, I would say, is more the masculine solution there. Is exploiting the flaw, whereas this is attacking the flaw. And doing so, I mean, Herbie even says it. Close your mind, it is full of pain and frustration and hate. She hates him and is letting that out. And then ultimately, Herbie goes so is insane to the point that it cannot possibly answer questions anymore, is utterly useless. So Lanning and Bogart leave with Herbie just collapsed on the floor there. But she is actually still in the room, still standing there and just thinking, calming down, and of all her turbulent thoughts, only one infinitely bitter word passed her lips. Liar. Because that's exactly what he was. He was a liar. Because he, as I said, it is a misinterpretation. I can understand how there are definitely people that believe that a lie, if it brings comfort, is better than the truth. No, it's not. A lie inevitably harms. If not immediately, it will later on. It sucks, but it is how things work. And it's actually kind of funny, the idea that Herbie would be reading books, reading novels, because in some cases that's exactly what you see there, is that with the truth comes, yes, some short-term harm, but ultimately the person is in a better position. So that's a little funny, but yeah. It is an interesting concept, and I think, well, that's true. Even if you read it from a book, it still is, the first law might override what he learns there. And that, I think, is really what it hinges on, because otherwise, I don't think that the reasoning holds up as well. Like, if it were a person, I don't think it would hold up. But a person can recognize that there are times that you do harm or allow harm. So, yeah. It is... I do like it. I do like the chapter. It's a good chapter. It's a good story there, because it does get into some of the ethics of these robots and helps you explore the laws. And one thing that actually would be interesting is if, along with some of these, there were, like, going back to the speedy stuff as well, if there were modifications to the laws, like they're refining them as they run into problems like this. I'm not entirely sure how you would refine the first law of robotics concerning this, but it still could potentially be done. And even then, just like a lie always harms, the truth does not always harm. So it's something there. So it would be interesting if there were that added note that things about designs being changed as they learn more. Because technically, as I said, with Powell and Donovan, they are QA testers. And so they are involved in the development. When they are finding flaws, those flaws should be fixed. And this technically is also a flaw. So anyway, the one thing that I wanted to mention, because it has occurred to me, because I have thought about mind reading as an ability. As I said, can't use it in the superhero stories, in the failure stuff. Did I say Catherine verse earlier? I might have. I didn't mean to. But in failure, in the So Many Gifts and subsequent stories, I can't use it because I also have 3 laws for how those work. Pretty sure it's 3. But one is the ability always comes from the person. So you couldn't read somebody else's mind unless you could, like, you'd have to mind meld with them. So it would always, to that degree, well, I guess an incidental touch maybe, but it still is that there would be usually a level of consent there, so it wouldn't stand up that well in that universe. Which is fine, I don't necessarily need that. I do have a workaround that opens up other things, and because, again, you can get some nuance, and that's where stories can get really interesting if you explore the nuance. But anyway, let's just talk about the idea of having a person that can just read minds, because I have thought about this. And what has occurred to me is that person's life would be miserable because they would always know. I mean, if they were a good person, if they were a moral person, they would know they are always accidentally violating somebody's mind. So, to use Calvin and Ash in this case, that person would know that Susan Calvin is attracted to, is interested in, is infatuated with this Ash character. I don't remember his first name. Would know that, which is a violation for her because she's not open about that, and she's been feeling that since before this chapter starts. And is aware of that, but potentially can't talk to her about it because that would embarrass her. And it's also it may force things that shouldn't be forced, and it's like it would actually be a torment for that person. And there would probably be other things as well where it's like you have to bear so many people's pains that they don't want to share, or even things where it's not even just things where it's like they don't want to share, but like if somebody is really angry and wants to yell out, let's say at that person, wants to yell out but doesn't, but controls himself. So, like if somebody, they want to yell an insult at this person, at the mind reader, because they're that angry, they're that frustrated, want to yell that, but they don't. The mind reader still knows it. Still knows that's what they wanted to do for a moment, even if they stop themselves, it's still they know it was there. They know it was there. I mean, it's kind of like for me, yes, I do try to avoid using any kind of cursing in the books. Unless it's necessary. Thus far, I haven't had it be necessary. Well, no, technically that's not true. I Call My Ship Catherine, but even then, that's actually used not as a curse, but an exclamation, because when the terraformer in that does see something that surprises him, he does go, "Son of a bitch," and it's just like that. It's just an exclamation there. It's not as a curse. So that nuance is something that the mind reader would always get, but at the same time, would also get any time that somebody doesn't use the curse word, but instead hides their feelings another way. So again, it would, in some ways, be great torment to them. But it would also then open up another possibility that would be interesting. And I think that could be a worthy story to explore. I don't know when I might do it. I don't know if somebody else already has. But because that person is essentially an unwilling confessor for everyone around them, what if they had a friend who was honest? And let's even let it be a rom-com kind of thing where it's man-woman, right? But somebody who is honest enough that, and honest in a certain way, that could even be like, yeah, you can say anything to me. I'm not going to be offended. And just like the whole, I know mind reader might be able to be like, well, I know you're attracted to me. It's like, yeah, okay. I was like, you're not embarrassed by that? Well, it's kind of embarrassing, yeah, but it's a truth. So moving on. And just something like that, we could more flatly deal with it. And just accept that this is what it is, and just always be willing also to have that conversation. It could with the mind reader so that they can reconcile any issue and resolve any issue. It could actually be a very interesting story there. Additionally, if that honest person is the only one who knows, and so at times may step up to intervene to protect the other, because they could be aware of it and know the pain that's going on there, and so does try to intervene to protect. It could be an interesting dynamic to have there. I don't know if anyone's ever explored that before. I don't know if I'd be good enough to write it out in a story, but I do think it is an interesting idea. Because it is, I mean, there's even a comment in there that no one can read Herbie's mind, and that happens fairly early, so it either is just saying that there is something off about him, or that he wishes somebody could, that somebody were to understand him. And I guess that's also it, going back to what I was saying with that duo where one can mind read, the other doesn't, but is simply honest about it and so accepts whatever. And let me be clear on that. An aspect of honesty this kind of honesty to me is the acceptance of it as well, the consequences of it, the responsibilities of it, such that you just it. To use the example of being attracted, and just being like, yeah, I can say that because it's just true, but it doesn't matter what your reaction is. Just say it anyway. You just be honest with it, and it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if that leads to something. Doesn't matter if it doesn't. Doesn't matter if it would hurt the relationship. If it would hurt the friendship. Say it because it is true. That kind of honesty there, compared with that pain of being everyone's accidental, I should say, accidental confessor, could be interesting. And maybe Herbie wishes that to a certain degree. Somebody could read his mind as well. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe someday I'll try exploring that. But I don't know. Because it is a story that would be pain. It would be a pain to go through to make sure that you're balancing things there well. Also, one thing about the honest person means that whatever they would say, the only issue as to a lie to the mind reader would just be things not said. Like if they were to lose emotional control for a moment, not say anything, but still have the emotion and then get under control, trying to address that. And that oh, I know you were angry with me kind of thing. It's like, yes, I was. And then maybe like explain it, go through it and try to reconcile from that. It could still be interesting, but it would not be the easiest to write. But there would be another pain as well, because the mind reader, you could start having the issue of, do they know themselves? Because they know everybody else's mind so well, are they, like, let's say that the honest person does in fact have feelings, and they are true feelings towards the mind reader. Does the mind reader actually have feelings back, or are they just reflecting the feelings because they are feeling it? Like, Calvin's going around happy, and that's confusing people. Well, what if Ash could read that, and so was feeling that happiness as well, feeling that joy, but it's not from within them, it's a reflection. It really could be a difficult story to write, because you'd have to somehow attack that and figure it out. And it would also be, I was like, one possibility might be the whole, oh, well, have some time apart to see if the feelings are still there. But there's also the issue of, well, for some people, seeing each other, being near each other, helps with that. Helps with feeling that love. So it is is not feeling it because of the separation? It is not feeling because the mind reading isn't happening, or is it happening because of the separation? But once again, that means absence makes the heart grow fonder, but does it? Maybe there are some people where that's not quite the case. That it is a connection there. But then, I guess there's always like talking on the phone, things like that, that would, at a distance, you wouldn't have the mind reading there. Yeah. As I said, it's just an interesting thought, and I felt like sharing it because, I'll be honest, with some of my story ideas, and that's definitely one of them. I don't know if I would ever find the time to write it, and I don't know if I would ever be good enough to write it. So if somebody would ever see this video and be like, that is an interesting idea, I want to try writing that, go ahead. Remember, if it is, I gave you the idea, remember to say thank you or something, but go ahead and write it. And if I ever decide to write my own version of it, cool. I mean, it's not like there's a problem with that. I mean, so many stories are similar to others. Nothing wrong with that. And who knows? I mean, one person's can be better than another's. One person's can be worse than another's. So write it. If you got an idea, write it. If you like somebody else's idea, write it in your way. Like I say, with the whole fan fiction stuff, why I don't like fan fiction, the concept of it is if you have a good enough idea for a story to write it, make it your own. Don't tie it to somebody else. Same kind of thing there. So yeah. And I don't know how many other times I may come up an idea that I have for a story, but it's like, I don't know if I'd ever get to it, but go ahead, do it yourself. And it's also like, with my superhero stories, please no fanfic, or any of my stories, don't do fan fiction there. But if you read it and you get something there that you like and you want to tell it in your own way, have fun. Just, remember, make sure it's your way, not my way, and you're just copying me. Don't do that. You you can be better than that. So make yourself better than that. All right. I say that to try to. I know I'm just probably stick both my feet in my mouth with this, but it's just more people telling stories, especially if they are telling them well, or at least trying to, making the sincere effort to tell them well. I see that as a good thing. Even if it ends up that 100 people write 100 stories that are really just variants of the same one, it still is, yeah, well, some of them will be better, some of them will be worse than others. Hopefully all the authors are happy with what they've written, even if it's like, oh yeah, yours is so much better. It's like, that's still all a good thing. Just, don't straight up try to steal from anyone else. That because then you're not sincerely writing something then you're not sincerely writing something to be the best writing you can do. I guess that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make there. That should be it. Next up is Little Lost Robot, which I'm pretty sure I do remember this one. It's if it is what I remember, it is. I do like it. And it is a good one. It gets more into the logic and does definitely demonstrate Calvin's intelligence and logic. Yeah. It if it is the one I remember, it is a good one. It is a good one. All right. See you next time.